Good evening. It is now 6 p.m. I'm calling the session to order. Study sessions are limited to commission discussion. No public comment is taken. No action or vote will be taken this evening. The study session serves as an opportunity for the commission to dialogue and provide feedback on a proposed item prior to a public hearing. On agenda is DR 24-37 Lumberyard. If staff would please come forward for the presentation.
All right, good evening, Commission. The case I have for discussion for you tonight is for the Lumberyard Design Review. The site is located west of the Heritage District, northeast of Neely and Cullenber, and is bordered by industrial, multifamily, and public facility and institution zoning. The rezoning for this site was recently approved in May, and I am now seeking your input on the design review submittal since the site is located within 1,000 feet of the Heritage District. I'm specifically looking for feedback tonight on the elevations, but also any general feedback that you would like to provide. The site is approximately 9.5 acres and is zoned multifamily high. The applicant is proposing to develop a 285-unit complex with the units split between 3 buildings. The units offered will be studio, 1-bedroom, or 2-bedroom options. One building will face Neely Street and will be 3 stories tall. Another building will be placed at the rear of the site, adjacent to the district lofts community, and will be 4 stories tall. The final and largest building will be placed central to the site and will also be 4 stories tall. The largest building will also surround a pool and amenity area, including a fitness lawn, outdoor kitchen, and fire pits. Additional amenities include 2 dog parks, naturescape seating area, indoor fitness area, mini market, coffee and beverage bar, and a business center. The applicant is proposing 444 parking spaces, which is the exact number required for the site. There will be approximately 71 garage spaces, 214 covered parking spaces, and 159 uncovered parking spaces. As proposed, there are currently no landscape islands underneath the covered parking, and staff is working with the applicant to find a solution for that. The development will be accessed from Neely Street, and parking will be located throughout the site, with garages being located along the northern and southern property lines, providing an additional buffer from the adjacent industrial uses to the south. Emergency secondary access for this site will be located at the northeast corner of the site. Right. The proposed emergency secondary access route seen here is still being finalized, but as currently proposed will be placed at the northeast corner of the site and travel along the eastern boundary of the future town-owned property until it reaches Phoenix Avenue. From there, it will curve up and around the district lofts community and exit out onto Ash Street. This access point will be for emergency vehicles only and will likely only be utilized if Neely Street is blocked due to an emergency. The open space requirement for multifamily high is 40%, but a planned area development was approved in May, allowing for the open space to be reduced to 35%. The applicant is currently proposing 35.3% of open space. Landscaping will include a buffer of trees along the perimeter of the site. The types of trees on site include, but are not limited to, ghost gum, fruitless olive, palo verde, evergreen elm, and southern live oak. Also found on site will be a variety of shrubs and ground cover, such as bluebells, Mexican honeysuckle, orange jubilee, pink oleander, lantana, deergrass, and red and blue yucca. The buildings are designed in a modern aesthetic with materials that are complementary to the adjacent Heritage District. Staff does have a handful of concerns that affect all of the buildings. These concerns have already been discussed with the applicant, and they were received positively for the most part. As a summary, our first concern was the exposed downspouts that will need to be internalized. Another concern regards the flat nature of the roofline. Staff has requested some variation in the roofline heights, but the applicant has expressed concern with modifying the roofline because the flat nature fits the more modern aesthetic look that they're going for. We ask that if you have any specific feedback or suggestions on how to proceed with the roofline concerns, to please provide that this evening. The next general concern we have is about the balconies. As proposed, they look like an afterthought. We've requested that they be incorporated into the building design in a more thoughtful manner. The balconies will also need to be covered as required by the Land Development Code. Staff has suggested that perhaps some of them can be recessed into the building to assist with covering them and also providing some additional dimension to the buildings. The last concern we have is about the continuity of the materials, which I will touch on over the next few slides. Seen here are the elevations for Building A. The top picture faces Neely Street, and the bottom is the east elevation facing internal to the site. The right shows what the ends of the building will look like. Overall, we are pleased with this building, but it is primarily one color of brick with some vertical fiber cement panel accents and is appearing a bit monotonous. We've suggested that perhaps adding a different color brick or an alternative material into the recessed areas on the west and end cap elevations might help break up some of the large brick presence. You can see a couple of the areas I'm referencing pointed out with the red arrows on the slide. As you move further into the site, use of more decorative materials such as brick decreases and is replaced with stucco and a larger use of fiber cement panels in both vertical and horizontal positionings. This slide shows Building B, the largest building central to the site. The top image is the south elevation facing existing industrial users, and the bottom building is the north elevation facing the future 10-acre retention area. These images show a closer look at the northwestern section of the building. The top pictures show the western portion of the south elevation, and the bottom shows the western portion of the north elevation. These are close-ups of the dotted areas here that are grayed out. All right, this slide here shows the east and west elevations as well as the north elevation that faces the pool and amenity area. You can see here that the north elevation is primarily stucco. With the exception of the ground floor, staff has requested that the quality of the elevations be consistent and not to remove materials just because they face internal to the site. The north elevation will be seen every day by residents who live here and spend time at the pool and amenity areas. The building is also 4 stories tall, and those upper floors will be seen by neighboring areas. Building C is the rearmost building adjacent to district lofts. The use of brick has been eliminated almost completely on this building, and we have requested that additional colors and materials be added to the building so that it has the same character level as the other buildings on the site. This building directly faces the district lofts community and should include more material variation so the neighboring properties aren't looking at 3 floors of stucco. Right, and seen here are the end caps of that Building C, an image of the proposed garages found on the north and south sides of the property, and also an image of the proposed monument sign for the community. And this is just a close-up of the colors and materials. They include a mix of stucco, brick, and fiber cement in varying shades of grays and whites, as well as a fiber cement with a wood-like finish. Right, and these are just some images of Building A's floor plan. That's the building closest to Neely Street. The first floor is on the left and the second and third floor is on the right. You can see the entry points on the east elevation. Seen here is the first floor plan for Building B. You can see the amenity areas in the northwest portion of the building that include a fitness center, mailroom, club room, and a lobby. This slide shows the floor plans for the upper levels of Building B, with the second floor being shown on the top and floors 3 and 4 on the bottom. Right, and then this slide shows the floor plans for Building C, closest to the district lofts community. The first floor is on the left, and the second through 4th floors is on the right. You can see the entry points from the west elevation. Lastly, I have a few snips of the proposed bedroom options. 20% of the units will be studios, 31% will be 2 bedrooms, and the remainder will be a mix of corner and standard 1-bedroom units. And with that, I am seeking your input tonight on the elevations, including the roofline variation and any other general feedback that you would like to provide.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, for a matter of the record, you'll note that Commissioner Baugh had left prior to the presentation as he is recusing himself for this item. So I just wanted to make that public statement.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Amanda. As this is a study session, it does not require a vote. However, this time is for commissioners to provide feedback and ask questions of staff and the consultant. Commissioner Updike, would you like to start?
Okay. For the roof line, what is the roof pitch currently, the slope?
It is flat.
2% or like totally flat?
Vice Chair Updike, I don't know the percentage, I'm sorry. Like if you can see here that it's mostly flat. I don't know that the percentage was included on the elevations. I'd have to get back to you on that.
So that's complete top of roof, not top of parapet on those elevations?
I'm going to assume that's the parapet, just based on where they put the downspouts, that there is a 4-foot parapet wall going around on a flat roof.
Yeah, and with that gap, I would back into assuming there's at least a 2% slope. So is that 1/4 inch per foot not allowed in town code?
I think the concern is
Or-
mostly just that it's such a long expanse of the same height. There's no height variation, there's no depth. It's all just mostly flat. The building facing Neely Street is roughly 220 feet, and it's all just one spans of roof line.
Okay, so the concern is at the elevation,
Yes.
having that very consistent line.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, I understand. I was maybe too literal then with that.
So we're just looking for some more movement, possibly something to help it just not be so flat.
Sure, yeah, and I think if you're also requesting variation in finishes and material and colors, I think there might be able to have some play there. Bringing in different colors and keeping it the same could give it a different appearance, but if all of these conversations are kind of happening in tandem, yeah, I love lines and I love straight lines, so
So we
I
did,
don't have a concern with it.
Vice Chair Updike, we did take this to Planning Commission study session as well, and I'm sorry I didn't include a slide on their feedback, I should have. But they were kind of on the fence about the roof line as well. The roof line is coming more from a staff perspective. Planning Commission they weren't overly concerned with the way that the building roof line looks currently.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Vice Chair Updike. Commissioner Bigelow or Commissioner Clausen, do you have any questions or comments?
I'll start. Yeah, I think I am less concerned about the roof line, but I would agree with staff that it does appear that the patios seem to be somewhat of an afterthought, just kind of tossed on there. It would be great to see some, I don't know, larger patios. I think it's a great idea to set back some of the patios deeper into the building to create a variation in depth and a little bit more more of an interesting elevation from the street, at least from different depths. I do have a question for staff, just a general question, because this is within 1,000 feet of the Heritage District. However, it is not in the Heritage District. How much is staff or wanting to see differentiation from the Heritage District guidelines? Are they wanting the applicant to stick to the Heritage District guidelines that are the design district guidelines that are set forth, or is the goal to differentiate and deviate from those guidelines and set it apart?
Sure. So Chair Kendall and I think Commissioner Clausen?
Yep, that's correct.
So they don't need to meet the Heritage District design guidelines because they are not within that boundary. We were looking for them to be at least complementary because it is adjacent to the Heritage District. It is connected to the Heritage District with that pedestrian bridge. So we didn't want something completely off the wall that just didn't blend whatsoever, but they are not required to follow those design guidelines.
Okay, perfect. And can we go back to the just main elevation, building A, B? Well, it doesn't matter which one for me.
I'm sorry, which building?
Yeah, either building. Yep, that's fine. That's good. Yeah, I think. And then, so in addition to the patios, can you go to the detail on some of the finishes, the detailed finish sample?
Oops. This one?
Yeah, perfect. That's kind of what I was wanting to look
And those
at.
fiber cement panels, they do go both horizontally and vertically in some locations.
Got it. Yeah, I think as a rule of thumb, I mean, I do think it comes across a bit uninteresting, and I can't necessarily put my finger on it, but I do think the patios are a big part of it. I'd love to see some shade structure over the patio spaces. As you had said, it could be created naturally by setting it back into the building, or it could be done, I think, in an interesting way with eyebrows or awnings of not. Don't get me wrong, not like material, more of a permanent awning, a stainless, type or a steel structure, not a fabric structure, but eyebrows, interesting features that could be added to add shade. I think it'd be great to see maybe a little bit more iron and glass on the building. And then, with some changes, I am far less concerned about the horizontal nature of the roof line.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Clausen. Commissioner Bigelow, do you have any comments or questions?
Yeah, I do. So, I also appreciate this study session being strictly on the design of it, because I feel like that is kind of what our job is. And just to make sure that things are consistent within the district and the surrounding buildings. I think we could maybe solve a few of these problems at the same time. And it is kind of a lot, but just looking, if you could go to the elevation titled General Elevation, where it has the concerns, or you could do this one's perfect. So right here, obviously, you said 210 feet, I believe, is the length of this, and this is what's going to be facing Neely in the top left. Is that correct?
Correct. So it's approximately 200, 220-ish, somewhere right around there.
I think there could be a very simple rendition of this where that middle section in between the two downspouts has a little bit higher of a roof line, has a pitch or an awning or an overhang, and then they could easily build those metal downspouts into that structure to where they almost wouldn't even be seen. They wouldn't be structural. You would still have some other way of supporting them, but I feel like they could easily integrate something in there to give it some depth, give it more character. And that would be a simple solution to break up the roof line a little bit and then kind of replicate that in a few other areas. That way you have some areas that are flat and then some that are slightly pitched, even though they aren't actually serving a purpose. It's more of just an aesthetic, to give it some dimension.
Great, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And I appreciate staff just echoing what they've already said about the building materials and keeping them consistent. I feel like the district loft did a really good job keeping its materials consistent, even in areas that are less seen by the public. But, as it grows, everyone's going to be seeing, the backside and the inside of all these projects, and just keeping it as consistent as possible is ideal, because it just gives it a better overall feel and look. I think that once they bring it to us next, if they could come up with a rendition of some sort of dimension in the roof line and then some other way with the balconies, then I think that would be very, very helpful for us to kind of look at this and look at what they come up with next.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Bigelow.
Perfect, thank you. Kristen, I appreciate breaking this down. I would echo everything that my fellow commissioners had said in regards to the aesthetic look and feel, the use of brick, iron, those types of things, and breaking up that the building that's going to face Neely, and then hiding the downspouts. I believe that we saw this before. Is that correct?
Yes, so Chair Kendall, it came through as a rezoning before. So you
Okay.
have seen pieces of it, the elevations. In the rezoning, I showed concept 3D rendering. This is now their formal design review submittal.
Got it. And were the number of units remain the same? Because I remember there being a parking issue.
Yeah, so it's going to be 285 units. Originally, when the plan came in for the rezoning, they were about 100 spaces under park. So they did rework the site. They acquired a little bit more property to the north, which increased their acreage to include more parking spaces. And now they're meeting their parking on the nose. They don't have any excess parking.
Okay. Okay. I don't think that I have any further questions. Any commissioners have any further questions or comments?
Yeah, I've got one. Just to echo Commissioner Bigelow, I think they could do something unique in between the downspouts there that could address the roof line. But I would also like to see, speaking of like district lofts, if you look at that project, the multiple buildings that they have there, some of those buildings have a completely unique identity from the building immediately next to it. I think in addition to doing something in between those downspouts to set off the roof line, I think you could, completely change the material and the facade of that center section, and it will visually almost appear as three separate buildings. Giving it just a more interesting curb appeal, so that it just so your eye doesn't just look left to right, horizontally and say the exact same scheme. I think you could, in a unique way, and it could help you solve the solution on, as staff has recommended, putting those downspouts internal, refacading that centerpiece, if you will, of that building, which could be a theme throughout the project. Could also help you solve the solution of putting those downspouts internal. But setting off that center section, I think, could go a long way, in addition to Commissioner Bigelow's idea on the roof line.
And Commissioner Clausen, I agree with you, and you talking about that when you was making me think of Hill Theater and what a fabulous job they did for it being one building and one use, but making it look multi-dimensional and using different materials. And I really don't have a problem with the smooth stucco. I know the reason they want to use it is because it's significantly cheaper than brick and block and siding. But I feel like if they come with a really good design to make it look more broken up and more like separate buildings, even though on the interior they're going to be identical, but having it kind of broken up, that's a way that they could do it to where it does make sense to implement block, brick, and stucco into the project. But just to have the whole outside all the same and a bunch of balconies and windows, almost like cookie cutters, just, copying and pasting, just doesn't look as good as I feel like it should or could. And so
Completely agree.
That's my
Great. Thank you, Chair Kendall. Commissioners, is there anything else?
Thank you, commissioners, for your feedback. I will now adjourn the study session.
Thank you.
Thank you. It is now 6:23, and I'm calling the regular meeting to order. If staff would please take roll call.
Mr. Chairman, if we could just have 1 minute, we'll grab Commissioner Bott, and I will then
perfect.
take roll. All right. Chair Kendall,
Here.
Vice Chair Updike,
Here.
Commissioner Baugh,
Here.
Commissioner Bigelow,
Here.
Commissioner Clausen.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Perfect, thank you. At this time, members of the public may comment on matters not on the agenda. The commission's response is limited to responding to criticism, asking staff to review a matter commented upon, or asking that a matter be put on a future agenda. Are there any communications from citizens at this time?
Mr. Chairman, we have one request to speak from Doralice Machado Liddell.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Doralice Machado Liddell. I'm a Gilbert resident in the Heritage District. I'm here regarding DR 24-37 Lumberyard Project. I did not attend any community meetings, redevelopment meetings, or planning meetings on this project since it was not in my neighborhood and it would not impact me. However, I was wrong. I do not understand why the developer would be placed on the design review study session knowing that the development does not meet fire code requirements. Also, why would the developer give the town $50,000 for traffic mitigation out of the goodness of their heart? It's odd. Why would the developer proceed possibly with a request for any type of easement from the town? Why would the developer insert a connection to the Phoenix Avenue without owning said property? Phoenix Avenue was dedicated in 1917 as part of the Lacey Track plat. To my knowledge, in over 100 years, the right-of-way has not been improved. Phoenix Avenue dead ends near the far edge of the district lofts. The road exits onto Gilbert Road. Phoenix Avenue's width is 33 feet wide, and I don't know for sure. I was told that it does accommodate two-way traffic, but I don't know if it includes sidewalks and curbs. The developer can redesign the site to plan to accommodate a secondary emergency exit. The developer should have been aware of these requirements. The developer can expand the width of the lot to meet the secondary emergent exit requirements by not selling some of the acreage that they're in the process of doing. The taxpayers should not help the developer pencil in their project. An easement onto town property does not serve the public interest and only serves the interest of the private developer. The town does not have to provide an easement to a private developer in order to meet fire code requirements. The tax revenue does not justify giving the developers an advantage over other developers and the property owners of Lacey Track. I hear the argument that Phoenix Avenue will only be used for fire and police. Why would you direct a ladder truck through a neighborhood that is already congested? This was the same justification for the district lofts. They used the fire exit. They told me that that fire exit would be for emergency purposes. It is not. To this day, that's where the traffic exits into the residential area, all of it on Collamer. In closing, the secondary emergency exit easement and the use of Phoenix Avenue for this project does not serve the best interest of the public. It only serves the interests of a private developer. And I hear and I listen to the comments regarding this is not in the Heritage District. It just became in the Heritage District based on the site plan. The site plan has it going and utilizing Phoenix Avenue as an emergency exit. Thank you.
Thank you, Doralice. Mr. Chairman, we have no other communications from citizens.
Perfect, thank you. Based off of the citizen comment, can we get some more information on Phoenix Avenue?
Mr. Chairman, we cannot converse on this item at this time, but Doralice can work with staff directly, and I believe she has already been conversing with staff members of planning and engineering.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Are there any more comments?
Mr. Chairman, no further communications from citizens.
Thank you. We'll now move into administrative items. Consider approval of minutes for the regular meeting held on April 17th, 2024. Are there any edits the commission wishes to make? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes from April 17th, 2024.
A motion to approve the meeting minutes.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Since we have two commissioners virtual, I will call individual for approval or denial. So Commissioner Clausen,
I'm vote to approve the minutes.
Commissioner Bigelow,
I vote to approve the minutes.
Commissioner Baugh,
Aye.
Commissioner Vice Chair Updike,
Approved.
and I also approve. We will now move into public hearing. Items will be heard at one public hearing, at which time anyone wishing to comment on a public hearing item may do so. Comments will be heard in those of support or opposition to an item. In order to comment on public hearing item, you must fill out a public comment form indicating the item number on which you wish to be heard. Once the hearing is closed, there'll be no further public comment unless requested by a member of the commission. After the public hearing, the commission may act on all items not requiring additional staff, public, or commission comment with a single vote. It is my understanding that we have 2 members of the commission who need to recuse themselves. Please note that Commissioner Baugh and Commissioner Clausen have recused themselves from item 3, 4, and 5. I will now open the public hearing for DR 23-109, DR 20-48A, Heritage North. Ashley.
Thank you, Chairman and Commission members. Happy to be here before you tonight talking about Heritage North. Again, this is DR 23-109. This is an amendment to the original case, DR 2048. As you know, this project is located at the southwest corner of Juniper Avenue and Gilbert Road at the north end of our Heritage District. We call this our North Anchor site, also Heritage Park or Heritage North, so you may have heard it by any of those names. Just by way of background, the total site is 11.97 gross acres or 9.9 net acres. It was originally approved by the Redevelopment Commission in February of 2022. Since that time, there's been some additional activity and work that the applicant has been doing with staff, working with SRP. And back in April of 2024, Town Council approved an amendment to their PAD that allowed the development to be constructed in phases. And so that's what we're here before you tonight to present that phasing plan, because that is a departure from what you had previously seen, which anticipated that it would be constructed in single phase. So tonight we're asking the Redevelopment Commission to approve DR 23-109, which again will allow phasing of this development as well as a couple other modifications that I'll cover throughout the presentation. So just to reorient you to the site plan, this is the master site plan and what the site will look like at full build out. There are a total of 9 buildings. It includes the commons open space at the center of the site, the full construction of Water Tower Way through the site, improvements to the Western Power Line Trail. And just to quickly run through the buildings, I know the numbers are very small up on the screen, but the large building at the northwest corner of the site is the multifamily building. It does wrap a parking garage that will serve those multifamily residents. Building number 2 at the hard corner of the intersection is the hotel building. Building 3 is a 2-story retail office building. Buildings 4, 5, and 6 at the center of the site are additional retail buildings that are single story. Building 7 at the very south end of the site on the eastern side up against Gilbert Road is a multi-story office building with retail on the bottom. Building 8 is that parking garage, and then at the center of the site there's a small kiosk as part of the commons open space. So this is full build out of the site. It includes those 2 parking garages as I mentioned. What the applicant received approval from, their PAD amendment included this proposal that would allow phasing of the site. So it includes construction of the multifamily, including that multifamily garage, buildings 3, 5, and 6, the commons open space, Water Tower Way throughout the site, building 9, and then the most significant change that you'll see on this plan compared to the last was that surface parking lot. This is anticipated to be obviously a temporary surface parking lot while they work towards build out of those sites, and then the next piece that we would see built would be that office building and the second parking garage. The hotel, it's important to note, could come in sooner along with phase 1, just depending on finding a user for that site. So again, phase 2 would then round out the construction of the site with building 4, Building 7, that office building, and then the south parking garage. It's important to talk a little bit about parking. So there are no changes to the overall parking of the site at full build out. Per the previously approved design review and their parking AUP that they received, they're required to provide 1,272 spaces. They will still meet that requirement at full build out. For phase 1, for all of the uses that they're building, they're required to provide 745 spaces. The surface lot will bring them to 782, so they will be meeting the parking requirement for that initial phase. I also wanted to talk about a couple of the changes that you have seen in your packet regarding the elevations. Had these come in on their own, they likely would have been processed as administrative applications, but because we had this one that we were bringing to you to talk about phasing, we've included them in your packet as well for consideration. Building 3 is that 2-story building that I talked about. It's 31,000 square feet, no change to that 2-story building. What they've changed is some of the glazing systems. They've replaced some of those with a structural beam. The north elevation, they had an interior arch parapet wall that was removed, and then they changed some of the masonry to masonry veneer. So these look very, very similar to what you had seen previously, but wanted to have you take a look at those. The materials, again, the only change is swapping out that masonry brick to a brick veneer. With retail building number 5, this one is more central to the site. This is a 7,700 square foot building. It's a single-story building that includes the public restrooms. Those will still be part of this structure. They did remove the pitched roof element with these elevations. They modified the storefront to better align with the pedestrian environment and canopies, bringing those down a little bit lower. And then they extended the mechanical screening. And so these are the new elevations for that building. Looks very similar to the original approval. Same materials. And then with retail building 6, this is a 6,700 square foot building, single story. Again, they made some of those similar revisions to the storefronts to align the canopies better for pedestrians. On the west elevation, they updated the electrical service room, and then they updated the pedestrian canopy on the southern facade of this building. So these are the new elevations. These ones, if you were to look at the original side by side, it's really hard to tell the difference between these ones. These were the original approved landscape plans. I just wanted to point out some additional changes that they made. If you make note of the south end of the site adjacent to the Western Power Line Trail, that is where you will see the change. As the applicant has worked with SRP on the easement that exists along the south side of the property and the improvements that they were allowed to make, there needed to be some adjustments to the south end of the property. So just for your benefit, I wanted to provide you what was previously approved. And then you'll notice on this plan, there's a change in the trees that are provided. They needed to comply with SRP's planting guidelines within that public utility easement, as well as ensure that SRP had service drives to service those power line trails. And so wanted to point that out to the commission. And then finally, the phase 1 landscape plans, they're still doing a significant amount of the landscaping. They're providing the landscaping that is required along the street frontages, along Gilbert Road, Juniper, and Ash Street. But because of the temporary nature of the surface parking lot and the construction that will occur at the south end of the site, they're not installing that landscaping as part of phase 1 because it wouldn't be there very long before construction starts. Staff is happy to answer any questions you have about this application. Staff does recommend approval. And I'm sorry, Sydney. You are welcome to ask the applicant any questions. They're here tonight as well. And then there are the 2 use permit applications that accompany this as well. So if you'd like to make your decision on this one, you can, or I can roll right into the use permits.
Thank you, Ashley. Any commissioners have questions for staff?
I do, because I think that approving this kind of goes hand in hand with the special use permits. I just wanted to know if I just wanted to know if that SRP, if that was the only major holdup between now and this project being approved back in February 2022.
Just to make sure I understand that question, are you asking if the delay was primarily the work that the applicant needed to do with SRP?
Yes.
You know, the applicant may be able to shed some additional light on that, but that was a big hurdle that the applicant needed to work through, was coming to resolution with SRP on what they could and could not do within that easement. I don't know if there are some additional factors that they may know of, but that was a big hurdle.
And the only reason I bring that up is because I think the concept is very well thought out, and I think it's really exciting to see so much development happening all at once, or initially it was going to, now it's going to be split up into 2 phases. And I just want to make sure that if we approve this and then we approve the to extend the other 2 items, that they're actually going to be done in a timely manner. I know it's a lot of money and there's a lot of planning that goes into this, but I just think that a lot, it's you know, I just want to make sure that we're not repeating and going through the cycle again later on down the road is all.
Chair Kendall and Commissioner, one thing that I will share with you is that in October of 23, one of the additional items that was taken before Town Council was an amendment to the development agreement that included an update to the development schedule. And so the applicant is bound by that development schedule and to perform to those construction timelines that have been established. And that includes submitting their building permits for the different phases. And so it outlines what those different phases are. They should begin construction this fall if everything goes according to that schedule. So there are some deadlines in there for both construction of phase 1, submittal of permits for phase 2.
Commissioner Baugh, do you have any follow-up question or comments?
No, just as long as there was a plan on, hey, once we get the ball rolling on this, you know, and we get phase 1 done. I know last meeting we'd spoken that it was going to be, permits were going to be on deck essentially for them to roll right into the next project, just so that it can keep moving along. I just wanted, I was more just curious if it was SRP, if that was the main holdup, or if there were other issues that were holding it up. Because if it was SRP and they got it taken care of, then it should be a clean path forward. But if there were multiple other issues, I just want to make sure there weren't any other lingering ones that if we approved to extend these, that could essentially make it to where phase 2 can't happen, if that makes sense.
Chair and Commissioner, I'll let the applicant further opine on that, but the other I guess piece of information that I will share is just the change in market for office, and that being one of the factors too that led to the office being postponed to the second phase.
Mr. Chairman, Ashley, pardon me for just 1 minute. I just wanted to make one clarification for the public. The individual on the phone is Commissioner Bigelow.
Thank you. Commissioner Updike?
I do have some questions. So you stated that some of those modifications to the finishes and elevations would have just been something done at a staff approval level. If I'm following the history correctly, are we simplifying? Are we removing some of that varying elevations? And are we removing some of the colors and creating a kind of a cleaner look? And if we are, I guess I'm just questioning as a standard where we fall on that, since we just had similar conversations requesting more color and more texture and more variations in lines.
Sure, Chair and Vice Chair Updike. So staff does have discretion if something we believe is substantially similar to what was originally approved. In this case, as an example on this elevation, and my images don't read great on this screen, but what they did was the storefronts originally kind of extended above the canopy, but visually from that kind of pedestrian line of sight, you couldn't see that. And so it made sense to allow them to reduce that height. There were a couple of other changes, but we do compare materials to make sure that we don't believe that it's a downgraded materials, that the buildings are still going to look as high of quality. If staff has concerns about that, we always have the ability to elevate an item and bring it back to the Redevelopment Commission. And so this just happened. It didn't make sense to have the applicant submit two separate application packages, one that we could approve administratively and then one that, you know, we brought to you because of the phasing. So had the elevations been the only thing that we were bringing forward, we did feel that this met this was substantially similar to what was previously approved. Just as they prepare their construction drawings, sometimes they start to look at, you know, how things actually will build out. And so those are changes that we sometimes see administratively.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question, the hotel was kind of self-parked, right? That hotel structure parked itself and is not relying on some of the other surface parking, right?
So the multifamily parks itself, that has a structure that wraps it. The hotel building is actually at the northeast corner, so it's the building two on here. Okay. They have some spaces that they can utilize within that residential garage, but then there's also some drop-off spaces at the front of the building, but then they were expected to utilize the garage, the south garage.
Of Building 8.
Correct, yes.
Okay, I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Updike. And thank you, Ashley. I do have a few questions in regards to parking. And when it comes to Building 8, which, can you remind us how many stories was that?
It, I believe, Chairman, is 5 stories.
And so if we go back to one of the last slides, it looked like the Paseo was actually cutting through the parking lot.
Chairman, as part of the phase 1, it does, because it was important to staff to ensure that that connection, even through the phase 1 development where there was the temporary surface lot, that Paseo connection was still made. So in phase 1, it goes through the parking lot. At full build out, you may recall that building 7 has a pass through on the first floor, and then the other stories are above it. I actually have a lot of extra sheets in here. So here you can see it kind of passes through the building.
Sure.
But then this is where it passes through building 7. So in phase 1, yes, it goes through the parking lot. Phase 2, it goes through building 7.
Okay. During phase 2, all of that parking will go away. Where do hotel patrons park, and where will retail and office park?
During construction?
Correct.
Chairman, that is a good question, and one that staff was concerned about as well. So they will phase construction of phase 2 as well. They will have to build the parking garage first, and so half of that surface lot will be under construction at some point, which will leave the site with a deficit of 164 parking stalls during construction. And so we have relayed to the applicant that they will be required to apply for an AUP. The district may be able to absorb some of that parking just through that process that we typically have for that temporary period. But we would also look for them to investigate some alternative solutions for that as well. So where else might they be able to have some temporary parking? And so that will be a application that we review when we reach that point. One for the AUP to see if we can allow some of the district parking to absorb that. But we do acknowledge that there will be a 164 space deficit during that construction period that we would ask the applicant to seek an alternative solution for.
If we could go back to the overall aerial of the flat surface parking and the buildings.
This one?
Yes. So if I understand you correctly, where the flat surface, where the majority of that flat surface, where we refer to as building 8, that will be built first in phase 2, and then building, I don't know, is that 5?
Building 7.
Building 7 will be built second. So there's a configuration in which cars will be diverted to park into the smaller area
Correct.
where the Paseo is cutting through. Okay. I don't have any further questions. Do you have any additional questions? Commissioner Bigelow, do you have any further questions?
I'm just looking through the agenda item and looking at the items that are expiring that need to be extended and seeing is there any kind of set timeline on how long within 6 months to a year they predict phase 1 will take, and then how long after phase 2 will take?
So I can certainly pull up the development agreement, but the applicant might have better information relative to when they actually anticipate that start of construction and then how long those phases are. The development agreement is a little bit more broad in that, but I do know that there are portions that would be complete. The multifamily has a longer build time than some of those smaller buildings, but off the top of my head, I believe they're the spring of 26. We were anticipating some of those, but again, the applicant probably has a better handle on more accurate dates.
Follow-up question. You had mentioned within the development agreement, essentially a guarantee on a build-out on phase 2, because right now, the applicant is within the parking spot. What is stopping them from saying, it's good enough?
I'm pulling up the schedule real
The
quick.
development. I think the development agreement is what prevents that, but I don't know or understand what the repercussions would be. But I think that's what holds them accountable to want to see the project through.
And is there, as I understand it, there's no exit onto Gilbert Road from the edge of that parking lot where building 7 would be?
So not directly into that parking lot, but I wonder if there is one that you can see a little bit easier. So just right south, buildings 5 and 6, there's that row of trees, and then there's a drive aisle. So that comes in from Gilbert Road. So it doesn't go directly into the parking lot, but where it says Hemlock Lane, if you can read that, that's an access off of Gilbert Road that would take you into the parking lot.
Okay. Are we pulling up the?
Yeah, I thought I had a slide in here, but it looks like I took it out, probably on accident.
Commissioners, are there any additional questions for Ashley or for staff?
The only thing I would say is just making sure, we're here for design. We're not here to enforce fire code or, any engineering or anything like that. And I just think that just make sure that we have a good plan figured out and a good timeline between phase 1 and 2, because there's not a direct line between those parcels and what's being built. It's kind of intermixed. And so just as long as we have a good, clear plan and we're on the same page of what the developers are going to do and what the town is going to do, and then that way we can kind of hold each other accountable, then I think it could end up being a really good project. But if it ends up not going according to plan or it's not written out clearly, then I think that's where things could the quality could begin to deteriorate on phase 2 of the buildings and just what's actually being built and versus what's proposed today. And so that's my only major concern.
Chairman and Commissioner, I did find the schedule on my slide, and construction of the phase 1 is anticipated to be fall of 24, whereas construction of phase 2 is to be winter of 25.
And just so I understand, Ashley, if you wouldn't mind, if come fall of 2025, they're not ready for it and they need an extra few months, not a big deal. But what if it takes 4 or 5 years for them to begin phase 2? I mean, what kind of happens in that situation, or what I don't know, how does that work?
So I'm probably not the best person to answer that question. We can probably have some internal conversation. I don't know what the remedy is per the development agreement off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Would the applicant like to speak at this time?
Good evening, commissioners, and I think good morning to one commission member. It might be a first for the RDC. My name is Alex Hayes, 2525 East Arizona Biltmore Circle. Here before you tonight with Heritage North. I know this is a project that we're all very familiar with and has been before this body a number of times, and I really don't have much more to add beyond what Ashley has. I think I'll, in the interest of time, just skip the presentation here. It's nothing you haven't already seen. The request tonight, in addition to the minor revisions that Ashley mentioned, is really just the phasing plan. And that's the phasing plan that it just formalizes that as part of the DR. It's the same phasing plan that this body recommended approval of as part of our PAD amendment that was ultimately approved by Town Council a couple months ago. Happy to answer any additional questions you have. I think just a couple of the questions that I heard with Ashley. For the hotel parking that it's actually building 1, which is part of that multifamily garage that has a number of spaces designated for the hotel, and otherwise it will be parked with surface parking or in the commercial garage. And as for timing, we are operating within this development agreement. One of the challenges that led to delays certainly was working with SRP, as they can sometimes be a challenge, but also, just as Ashley mentioned, the state of the office market that created some challenges for project financing and getting that portion of the project off the ground, which kind of led us to this phasing plan so that we could get at least some of it out of the ground and operational, because I know it's a project that certainly we are excited about. I know the town's excited about, and we've heard from a lot of residents that they want this to be built as fast as possible. So that's certainly our intent, and this phasing plan will allow us to do that. Once we have that approval, we can get submitted for building permits, which we've been working on at risk already, so we can get moving as fast as possible. I think once we get those in the door, we're looking at probably 12 to 14 months to complete that phase. And then with phase 2, there is a development agreement that has a timeline that that's our plan to abide by that. The development agreement does have legal remedies for enforcement, and I know, the applicant here has been a good partner with the town, and I think the town would echo that sentiment. So, we would look forward to working with the town and to, bring that phase 2 online as certainly as fast as possible, but in a way that that makes sense and works best for everybody. But right now we do have a timeline and a development agreement that codifies that with enforcement mechanisms. So with that, happy to answer any questions. I think Ashley did a good job kind of covering the minor revisions to the elevations. Most of those have no visual change. As it relates to the use permits, I think those are all, it's just extensions of things that the RDC has already approved, so I'm happy to answer any questions for those. But when you bring those up, I probably won't come up to the podium, but certainly will if you have any questions.
Thank you very much. Did this include signage?
Chair, this signage is not a part of this request.
Okay.
We'll be back with the sign plan.
Okay.
Commissioner Bigelow here. I appreciate you letting me know and just kind of clarifying. I'm not even concerned about the time. I know big projects like this take a long time to happen. It's more just ensuring that there is a plan in place and that the quality of what you guys are wanting to build can be maintained. And I think that you guys are going about it in the right way. And I do know that the market is, evolving and changing as far as what the needs are. And to raise money to build beautiful buildings like this, you got to build what's going to rent, what's going to work. And so I think rather than a speed, it's just more of maintaining the quality of what's being built and the quality of what the renderings that are being shown. Because if we can make this come to life, then it's really going to be an amazing project.
Vice Chair Updike?
Thank you. I got nothing though.
Does the developer have any plans on phase 2 when it comes to parking? I think there was a deviation of 127 spots. Could be more. But what is the official, unofficial plan around that, and the remedy to make sure that parking and things are still flowing through?
Yeah, good question, Chair. We don't have a detailed parking plan yet for that kind of interim construction phase, which we anticipate to be probably 6 to 8 months. We can try to phase it in a way that allows us to surface park on the building site while the commercial garage is being built. But otherwise, we still need to look at, what the options are for that interim period and kind of where that can be absorbed within the Heritage District.
Is there any indication on how long that parking garage would take to build?
We're thinking about 6 to 8 months.
Okay. Staff, are there any members of the public in attendance who wish to speak on DR 23-109 Heritage North?
Mr. Commissioner, yes, we have one request to speak from Doralise Machado Liddell.
Thank you.
Good evening again. I just have a few questions, not questions, but concerns. I talked about this on multiple occasions at multiple meetings regarding the naming of Park Avenue. And I look at that just as a security concern, and I know it's a private drive, but in an emergency response, if something is going down, the public will be calling Park Avenue. So we have West Park Avenue, East Park Avenue, and then we have that Park Avenue. I just bring it up again because that is one of my concerns is for emergency responses into the area. Other than that, I hope the day will come when this is completed. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the applicant have any response they'd like to share? I have a few name suggestions for that street. Maybe Torgerson Way. Are there any additional questions for town staff?
Chairman, if I may, just one thing I actually forgot as part of my presentation. There's a typo in condition number 1. I never changed the date from the May hearing to June 19th. So if you are looking to approve that item, I would ask that you change condition number 1 to change the date from May to June 19th. Of 2024, and then just for the record and for the public, there is actually a condition in here because Miss Liddell, we heard her when she spoke previously about this item, and we have a condition in here that they modify those street names.
And then, do you mind if I add something in there with UP 23-44 Heritage North? Just to kind of refresh my memory on this. The ground floor was originally residential, but then they wanted to change it to commercial because of the amount of glass that was required for the first floor. But this is saying that we would still allow it to be residential.
Commissioners, so I will actually go through presentations on the use permits next. So right now we're just talking about the design review, but to answer that question as it relates to the design review application, they received a deviation as part of their PAD originally, I believe, to reduce the amount of transparency required on the ground floor of the residential building. So the residential portion, the use permit, does allow ground floor residential, and the transparency issue was handled as part of the PAD.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I will now close public hearing on DR 23-09 Heritage North, and we'll look for the commission for discussion. Who would like to share their thoughts first? DR 23-109, thank you. Would you like to start, Vice Chair Updike?
I don't really have any additional comments, so appreciate the discussion, but I don't have anything else.
Commissioner Bigelow?
No more comments on DR 23-109.
I think that we've all shared our thoughts and concerns. Do I have a motion and a second for DR 23-109 Heritage North?
I move to approve DR 23-109 Heritage North.
I second that approval. Commissioner Bigelow.
I have a motion and a second on DR 23-109 Heritage North. Commissioner Bigelow, how do you vote?
Approved.
Commissioner Updike?
Approve.
And I also approve. Thank you. I will now open a public hearing for UP 23-44 Heritage North, ground floor residential, and UP 23-45 Heritage North Hotel. Staff has requested to present on this one item.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioner. As you mentioned, this is UP 2344 and UP 2345. Again, the same site located at the southwest corner of Juniper Avenue and Gilbert Road. within our Heritage District. This is on 9.9 net acres. By way of background, this was approved in January of 2022. It was for both ground floor residential uses as well as a hotel in the Heritage District. Use permits per the Land Development Code are good for 3 years unless the use has commenced. And so these are set to expire in January of 2025. And we know that the construction period for these will be longer than that. And so we're here before you tonight essentially to ask for an extension of those. So again, the two items, UP 2344 is the conditional use permit to allow ground floor residential in the HVC zoning district. And then UP 2345 is to allow a hotel in the HVC zoning district. So to orient Commission again to the location of these two, Building 1, located at the northwest corner of the site, is that multifamily building that will include the ground floor residential. Building 2 is the hotel site. It's important to note there are no changes as part of this application. It is simply just to request an extension of that. When we request use permits or when we require use permits, these are items that just essentially require special consideration so that we can evaluate any adverse impacts that they may cause on the surrounding area. And so with that, there are 4 findings of fact that the Commission must make to approve these types of applications. It's that it can't be detrimental to the health, safety, general welfare of those living or working in the area, that it conforms to the intent and policies of the general plan or any other applicable plan such as the redevelopment plan, that it conforms to conditions, requirements of the zoning code, and that it wouldn't interfere with the use of enjoyment of nearby properties. The ground floor residential component, there are 288 units. This is in compliance with the approved development agreement that requires a total of 250 units within that residential building. The residential with patios are oriented towards juniper and ash, so there is still going to be kind of pedestrian-friendly environment along those roadways. And then staff, through the original entitlement process, worked with the applicant to ensure that the ground floor amenity areas were oriented towards the center of the site, so you still felt that activity that we would normally get from a non-residential use on the ground floor. We added a condition as part of the original approval that's being maintained as part of this extension request that requires storefront windows at their fitness center. There's a coffee shop on the ground floor to still activate that ground floor. With the hotel, it's an 80,000 square foot hotel, 100 room hotel, which is in compliance with the approved development agreement. The Heritage District redevelopment plan includes on this site the notion that a hotel would be developed here, so this is certainly in conformance with that specific plan. Staff would recommend approval of both of these use permits, or the extension of both of these use permits. So keeping this one short and sweet, if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Commissioners, do we have any questions for Ashley? Hearing none. Would the applicant like to speak? Oh, Commissioner Bigelow?
Oh, just going back to the ground floor retail is, I know this is to extend it, but in my mind, I'm just thinking that we need as much retail as possible. We're sure that having a gym with, showing glass in a coffee shop, that's enough or sufficient for what the town wants and needs along that retail, along Juniper and Ash?
Chairman and Commissioner, staff is satisfied with the amount of commercial that they have provided on site through their other buildings, and is comfortable with this application.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Updike? Would the applicant like to speak? Staff, are there any members of the public in attendance who wish to speak on UP 23-44 Heritage North Ground Floor Residential or UP 23-45 Heritage North Hotel?
Mr. Chairman, there are no requests to speak on those items.
Perfect. I will now close public hearing on UP 23-44 Heritage North ground floor residential, and UP 23-45 Heritage North Hotel. And we'll look to the commission for discussion. Who would like to share their thoughts first? Commissioner Bigelow?
I think Alex Hayes did a good job explaining the timeline and, kind of the expectation of, what, he wants to get the ball rolling and get this thing built. And my only concern is really just with the, making sure we have enough retail and shops and, everything for small businesses. And if town and staff has already vetted and gone through with that, then as far as my job is design review, I think it looks like a great project and I'm excited for it.
Thank you, Commissioner Bigelow. Vice Chair Updike?
Yeah, I was here in 2022 with you all when we voted for this the first time, so I don't really have concerns with extending that CUP, so I'm ready to move it on to a motion if you are.
I agree. Commissioners, each one of these items will need a motion. Do I have a motion and a second for UP 23-44 Heritage North ground floor residential?
I move to approve UP 23-44 Heritage North ground floor residential and UP 23-45 Heritage North Hotel.
Pardon me, Vice Chair Updike, we need to do two separate motions.
One at a time?
Yep, one at a time.
Okay.
And then just, if you can ensure that you guys add in the subjects to conditions that's listed on the screen there.
I move to approve UP 23-44 Heritage North ground floor residential with conditions A through C.
Do I have a second?
And I second to approve UP 23-44 Heritage North, ground floor residential. And what were those numbers, or what were those letters again?
UP 23-44, subject to conditions A through C.
Objective conditions A through C. Oh, there we go.
Commissioner Bigelow, what is your vote?
Approve.
Vice Chair Updike?
Approved.
And I approve as well. Do I have a motion and a second for UP 23-45 Heritage North Hotel?
I move to approve UP 23-45 Heritage North Hotel with conditions A through C.
Do I have a second?
I second
Perfect.
that motion to approve UP 23-45 Heritage North, subject to conditions A through C.
Perfect. Commissioner Bigelow, how do you vote?
Approved.
Vice Chair Updike?
Approved.
And I approve as well. Thank you very much. Thank you, commissioners and staff. Can we please have Commissioner Baugh and Commissioner Clausen return for our last two items?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are working on getting Commissioner Clausen right back on the line.
I don't know. Just go on mute. Do we have Commissioner Clausen back?
Mr. Chairman, we do not have him back on the line yet.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, he is now on the line.
Perfect, thank you. I will now open public hearing for DR 23-83 HD South. Ashley, would you please proceed with the presentation? Busy tonight.
I am. Thank you, Chairman and Commission. So very happy to be here again with HD South. This is DR 2383. This is located at the southwest corner of Gilbert Road and Elliott. We know this is the Gilbert Historical Museum. There's that existing building, which you can see on the site here. And then where that green box is where the expansion of this project is intended to go. So this is on a total of 2.2 acres. The site is zoned public facilities and infrastructure. The site that exists on the east side of the property is 13,000 square feet roughly, existing building, as well as some storage buildings, and they're looking at doing a 6,200 square foot expansion for event space, conference room. It's a multi-purpose building. One thing to point out about the site, they are making some improvements to the parking lot in terms of restriping it and adding a refuse enclosure. The bulk of their parking is through a shared parking agreement with Gilbert Public Schools on the adjacent property. Just south of this site is the district office for Gilbert Public Schools, and then to the west is Gilbert Elementary School. So they have 90 off-site parking spaces at those facilities per that agreement with Gilbert Public Schools. In terms of the landscape plan, there will be some improvements to the property along Elliott Road with some additional plantings, but the bulk of the improvements occur within that courtyard space to really help kind of enliven that area as they have different events. There are additional trees that will be planted between the site as well as between the site and the Gilbert Public Schools facility to the west. This does comply with the Heritage District design guidelines along those street frontages. However, you'll note that in my staff report, I did point out that some of the plantings within the courtyard that are not visible to the public are not on that plant palette. However, again, those won't be visible to the public. The site complies with open space requirements with 42% open space overall. In terms of the elevations, the intent of these elevations is not necessarily to match the existing architecture, but complement it. So you see that through some of the arches that they've provided, the mission style architecture. So on the bottom, that east elevation is from inside the courtyard looking at that new building structure. And then these are the elevations. So the south elevation will face an existing structure on site, and then the west elevation at the bottom of the screen will face the district, the school site to the west. In terms of colors and materials, they are proposing terracotta colored concrete roof tile that matches the existing tiles. There's a CMU wall around the property that is Founders Finish CMU block that matches the school district as well. It's largely made of stucco, consistent with that mission style architecture. There will be a paint refresh to both the existing building and this new addition that will match the Gilbert Public Schools district office building. In terms of the floor plan, I know this is a little bit difficult to see, but you can see that there is kind of that large event space, some conference rooms, and those types of facilities that will make this an excellent addition to the museum. One thing that I didn't mention that I intended to say at kind of the outset of this was this application received its initial approval in 2019. Similar to those use permits, design review applications have a approval that lasts for 3 years, and so these approvals have expired. And so the applicant is here tonight looking to kind of reaffirm the approval that expired in May of 2022. They are now looking to move forward. They do have their construction drawings submitted to the town with the intent to begin working on this addition really just as soon as they can get this approval and then those building permits issued. So happy to answer any questions that you have. We have the applicant team is here as well.
Thank you, Ashley. Are there any questions from the commissioners?
It may be more of a comment, but some time ago, I pulled a lot of weeds on this property. Part of class 20 Gilbert leadership. Planted a lot of plants, and I don't think any of them are alive. No, there are some of them. I can appreciate as a nonprofit, limited resources in maintaining landscaping. What I like about this version of your new design review is there's a lot of hardscape, which I assume one of the purposes is to create more of an event space, but it can look beautiful without the detraction of landscaping that is hard to keep up with. Whereas on the front side, which is the street side, lots of landscaping, right? My question is regarding I know that I think I'm understanding, but the front side is not part of, the front landscape along Gilbert Road isn't really part of this proposal, but there might be a refresh. Is that right?
That is correct. They're actually not proposing any improvements to kind of that lawn area and the palm trees that exist along Gilbert Road, just along Elliott.
Okay. Maybe less of a comment, maybe less of a question, more of a comment that the vibrancy of the front side, while it's outside of maybe the scope of what this particular matter is, as future revisions come up, considering what a new landscape palette might look like along the front side, obviously within a cost that could reduce the amount of ongoing maintenance, because I think aesthetically it would improve the street appearance, going forward. But I appreciate what you've done. I think this is a great spot on the west side.
Thank you, Commissioner Baugh. Any other questions or comments from commissioners?
Can you go back to the slide that talked about the zoning of it? Or this one, yes, thank you. Okay, let me have a second. Okay, I think I answered my own question, so thank you. Thank you for presenting.
Commissioner Clausen, do you have any comments or questions?
I do not. I think it'll be a beautiful addition.
Commissioner Bigelow?
Nope, I agree with Clausen. I think it'll be great to have a refresh on it. It'll be great, and it'll mirror the beauty of the district school district building right next door to it. So I think it'll be great.
I agree. I'm really excited for it. I do have one question. When it comes to parking, is it shared parking with Gilbert Public Schools?
Chairman, that's correct.
Okay. Would the applicant like to speak at this time? No? Staff, are there any members of the public in attendance who wish to speak on item DR 23-83?
Mr. Chairman, we have no request to speak on this item.
Perfect. Any additional questions for staff? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing on item DR 23-83, HD South, and we'll look for the commission for discussion. Who'd like to share their thoughts?
Nothing more to add.
All right. At this time, I will look for the commissioners for a motion.
I move to approve the findings of fact for DR 2383, subject to the two conditions in the staff report.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Commissioner Baugh,
Aye.
Commissioner Bigelow,
Approved.
Commissioner Clausen,
Approved.
Vice Chair Updike,
Approved.
and I approve as well. Thank you very much. Final public hearing item. I will now hear public hearing for DR 24-60, Water Tower Plaza landscaping. Kristen, if you would like to please provide the presentation.
So, hello again. Thank you for having me a second time this evening. The case I have for you tonight is for a landscape deviation request for Water Tower Plaza. The site is located at the southeast corner of Ash Street and Page Avenue, and it is zoned public facility and institutional zoning. Right, and within the Heritage District, landscaping usually follows the Heritage District design guidelines. Any landscaping that does not follow those guidelines needs to be approved through the Redevelopment Commission. Typically, these requests are part of a larger design review being brought forward, but the renovations to Water Tower Plaza qualified for an administrative design review that was approved in January of this year. Because of that, the only request before you tonight is regarding the landscape deviations, and you can see the locations of the requested plant life deviations in red on this plan here. Right, and the project is requesting 2 deviations from the approved landscaping found within the design guidelines. The first deviation is for the inclusion of 5 ghost gum trees. Before the renovation, there were ghost gum trees on the site that were unable to be salvaged. Installing the 5 new ones is a way to integrate the species back into the project. The ghost gum tree has been approved on previous projects within the Heritage District in the past this year. The second deviation request is for 8 totem pole cacti. They will be utilized as accent pieces and are going to be found in steel planters that are located beneath the water tower. The vertical nature of the cacti are intended to kind of accentuate the supporting structure of the water tower. And they have also been approved by the Redevelopment Commission in the past on projects this year. And that shortest presentation ever. Staff does recommend approval of the DR 2460 landscape deviations for Water Tower Plaza. If you have any questions, I am available.
Perfect, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for staff?
I'm curious why the ghost gum. Is it just because that's what was there before? Or
Yes,
is
so-
there some other value with that plant?
So Chair Kendall, Commissioner Baugh, the reason I was given was that it was because they were on site. They intended to salvage the trees that were located on site before the renovation started. They just weren't able to, so they want to incorporate them back in.
So I can appreciate salvaging trees. You know, there's some value of that, historical, but also from some cost savings. But are these the best trees for that area?
I know in the narrative they did also mention that the ghost gums are typically very vertical in nature. They don't have a super large canopy, and that kind of goes hand in hand with what they're going for with the totem pole cacti as well. They're going for vertical plants that kind of lend a theme to the water tower.
So could we go back to the image of the ghost gum? Because that's, I think, why I'm not really a fan of them. And by the way, this is interesting because the town is exempt from their own zoning code, but they're going through this process, just so you know. Like, they don't have to follow these rules. But the ghost gum tree to me isn't a really attractive tree. I don't feel like it has a good canopy, and I think the utilization of that space is to gather people, and it seems like that's where we'd want trees that create a shade canopy for heat relief. But I'm not going to care enough to object, but I just, in my mind, I think if we were going to put in new trees, we'd put in trees that had a bigger canopy. Is it because of the adjacent building roof? What is the cause or reason?
Chair Kendall, Commissioner Baugh, I don't have any further information.
If I recall, I believe there's a canopy that's being installed.
That's true.
So there is a canopy that's being installed, but this portion that the ghost gums are lining is a turf area, and there's also a water wall on the north side of it, on the north side where the ghost gums are.
If the ghost gums are going to be lined by a turf area, then I would strongly echo what Commissioner Baugh was stating about planting a tree that maybe does do more of a canopy and does offer more shade. Just because I feel like a chamois ash or even a push pistache or just something that can grow tall and out would just make a lot more sense on hot summer days if we're wanting to get as many days of use out of this park as we can each year. And that's my opinion.
Unless there's a concern about roots.
I truly don't have any additional information. I'm sorry. There. No one. Oh, hi. So the applicant is here. I apologize. I didn't realize that. You want to? might be able to lend some additional information on why the ghost gums were chosen.
Good evening, Commissioners. I hopefully can shed some light on the reason for the ghost gums. As Kristen mentioned earlier, we are hoping to honor the original ghost gums that weren't able to be salvaged. The city or the town really did enjoy the forms that they offered at the park previously. The cost was just too much to salvage those trees. So we want to honor previous park users who enjoyed those trees as well by the inclusion of those trees. In terms of some of the questions I've heard earlier, we have explored other trees in the area. In terms of shade, just the way that the south lawn is positioned in terms of where those trees are being placed, you won't be able to capture a whole lot of shade during any months, especially during the summer. And during winter, the shade that those trees will be casting will be pushed north to the plaza area, which will be already shaded by the shade canopy for the splash pad as well as the existing water tower. And then also, we didn't want really bulky shade canopies in this area because we didn't want to completely separate the two zones of the site in terms of the event lawn and the plaza space to the north of the event lawn. We want to try to keep those areas as open and integrated as we possibly can.
Thank you. Any additional questions for the applicant?
Yes.
Okay.
Will you, with this exhibit, identify where you see structures, height structures, shade canopies, all such items?
So, Chair Kendall, Commissioner Baugh, the shade structure is here. The water tower is here with the granite ball that's located underneath it. This here is turf. You have red push pistache trees here and here. These are the ghost gum trees. Over here is a new restroom building. The water wall is here. So really the only structures that you're seeing are going to be the restrooms and the splash pad structure, shade structure. Did that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Any additional questions? How about our virtual commissioners, Clausen and Baugh? Or, sorry, Bigelow?
I'm okay. I mean, I'll pay for the trees if we can get some with more shade. If we want to keep it what they were, as long as it's not hey, we pulled out these big trees, we tried to save them, we couldn't, so we're going to plant 24-inch box ghost gum trees just because that's was there before. And I just kind of feel like that's kind of the thought behind it. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to deny it over, 5 trees that I don't agree with. But I kind of feel like as much shade in Arizona as we can get, the better off we all are. And that's just how I feel.
Out of curiosity, what other trees were considered?
The original approved trees for this area were red push pistaches.
Which we have on the.
And can you do you have a really other than those the ghost gums look, following the look of the totem pole cactus and the water tower, was there any reason to pick them over the red push pistache?
There is some issues that we have with the roots of the red push pistache. There are a lot of underground utilities in terms of that granite water ball, as well as some lines heading towards the splash pad, and so we will have to include root barrier, kind of tightening around some of those roots for the trees in this area. And we think that the red push pistache, with their wide roots systems, might have some issues growing as tall and as big and as luscious as they possibly can. So we think that the ghost gums would be a more better fit in terms of their root spread in this area as well.
Okay, perfect. And I like that answer. That's a really good answer. And I would assume that whatever you're seeing above ground is being mirrored below ground, that your red push pistache is going to stay shallow, is going to, it's not going to go as deep and it's going to spread more. And the ghost gum are going to go deeper and more narrow roots.
Correct, Commissioner.
Okay. I like that answer. I mean, I still like the shade, but that makes sense.
Any additional questions or comments?
I do have more comments. Are we at the comments part of this, or are we at the questions part of this?
We're still at questions, sorry. Any additional questions? Hearing none, I will close public hearing item DR 24, thank you. 60 Water Tower Plaza landscaping, and we'll look for commission for discussion. Commissioner Baugh, would you like to start?
Yeah. I feel like it's a missed opportunity. You know, we have this downtown area. We want to create vibrancy. We want people to walk around and hang out a little bit. And these trees just don't provide that type of shade canopy, which is really easy to deliver, I think. I know if I was creating a project with outdoor areas, I think staff would tell me to put more shade tree plantings in them for the comfort of users so that they utilize that outdoor space intentionally. Do I care about 5 trees that much? I don't know if I really do, but I just feel like it's important to say if we're trying to create this outdoor area and walkability and leisure and comfort and draw people here, you know, shade is one of the key things to do that in Arizona. And I just look at those trees and I go, those trees aren't going to provide any of that relief that you should be able to have in that area. So when I think through like where are the structures, the canopies and the heights that, you know, there might be conflicting, there's just not much. There's a shade structure over a splash pad, but that's really kind of it. So I don't really see a lot of other relief that you'd want to see in an area like that. So, you know, I wish that they would, that staff would look at, maybe it's not red pistache, but there's got to be another type of tree that could provide some canopy to make that area useful. My own 2 cents.
Thank you, Commissioner Baugh. Commissioner Clausen, do you have any comments?
I think the applicant did a good job with their explanation. I mean, I think I would echo the concerns of Commissioner Baugh and Commissioner Bigelow, but you know, I'm not a botanist and definitely not a tree expert, and you know, I think Commissioner Bigelow had you know said it best. I don't want to hold up an approval over 4 or 5 trees. I don't disagree with Commissioner Baugh that it may be a miss. You know, it's also an easy opportunity to potentially provide additional shade. But I think the applicant provided a satisfactory response as to why that ended up being the final decision on their end. So that's my only comments.
Thank you. Vice Chair Updike?
Nothing for me. Thank you. Thank you for your explanation as well.
Thank you. At this time, I'll look for a motion from the commission.
I move to approve DR 24-60 Water Tower Plaza landscaping.
Do I have a second? I'll second DR 24-60 Water Tower Plaza landscaping. I'll call for a roll vote. Commissioner Bigelow?
Disapproved.
Commissioner Clausen?
Approve.
Commissioner Baugh?
Nay. Nay.
Commissioner Updike,
Approved.
and I approve. Passes 3-2. We will now move into communications. Communication from the chair. The Clare House has a reprieve for at least a few more weeks. And so donations are still being taken at hdsouth.org. If you qualify for a tax-free or a tax-deductible situation, you can certainly make that donation at hdsouth.org. And we still are in the process of trying to move and protect the Clare House to the site at HD South. And I would encourage anybody who has any questions about that to reach out to Denise Lopez from HD South. Councilmember Torgerson, do you have anything you'd like to report on current or future events?
Well, thank you, Chair Kendall. I'm going to use my best. I don't want to do a Chuck Bongiovanni, so I'll just do it. I'll do this slow and concise. I want to say thank you, all of you, for your participation in the Joint Redevelopment and Planning Commission meeting. We hope you found the information valuable for members of the public who are interested. A recording of the meeting is available on the town's YouTube page. Thank you again. Yesterday at the Gilbert Town Council meeting, the council approved a new redevelopment boundary for Northwest Gilbert from Arizona Avenue east to Lindsay and Baseline Road south to Ray Road. This boundary excludes the Heritage District. Oh, I just went off mute there, so that's dangerous. The next step is a process to work with the community to develop goals, strategies, and prioritization through a redevelopment plan. This 10-year plan, once completed and vetted through a comprehensive public process, will be brought forth to council for adoption. As we look ahead to July, the town will be hosting an Independence Day celebration on July 4th from 4 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. at the Gilbert Regional Park. This event is free, but on-site parking is required for $15 per car, payable by credit card only. Lots open at 4 p.m. A VIP experience, I just wonder what that means. Upgrade is available for a fee. More details about the event are available on the town's event calendar. And that is all I have to report to you today, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Torgerson. Commissioners, anything to report on current or future reports? No. None? Amanda, do you have anything to report to us tonight?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, no report, but just wanted to continue to say thank you for everything that you guys do. This was a busy month, and so we just appreciate you tremendously. Thank you.
I will follow up and say that I enjoyed the joint session with the Planning Commission and the Redevelopment Commission. I learned a lot, and it was good to understand the process and build camaraderie. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much. We will adjourn the meeting with newly adopted procedures for council boards and commission. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Would anybody like to make a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Perfect. Do I have to vote on that?
I think so. If you make a motion.
Mr. Chairman, you can move to
Okay.
adjourn then.
It is now 7:48, and I will adjourn the Redevelopment Commission meeting. Thank you.